The world was still turning when Dr. Elias Harper spotted the anomaly. Harper was one of those rare astronomers who preferred the solitude of the night shift at the Pan-STARRS Observatory, finding solace in the quiet hum of the data stream and the endless black of the cosmos. But tonight, something had jolted him from his usual calm. An object was hurtling through the solar system, far too fast, and it was headed directly toward Earth. He frantically checked his calculations, the weight of the discovery pressing against his chest. He triple-checked, hoping to find some flaw in the data. But every variable confirmed the impossible, a rogue planet spiraling straight toward Earth at speeds defying any natural explanation. Within hours, the world was awake. Screens across continents lit up with the news. A massive celestial object, dark and silent as the void itself, they called it, was closing in. Scientists, military leaders, world politicians, all scrambled for answers. The headlines drummed the impending disaster into the public's psyche like a pounding heartbeat. In Washington, government officials convened in emergency sessions as reports poured in. The calculations painted a bleak picture. Earth had barely 6 months before impact. 6 months before the last days of their civilization. The president authorized a team to initiate Project Lifeboat, a last-ditch effort to design massive space habitats to save a fraction of humanity. 3 weeks later, Mira Shen sat in a sparsely furnished conference room, staring at the thick dossier on the table in front of her. She had been one of the first engineers approached for Project Lifeboat, her background in extreme scenario engineering unmatched. But she'd thought long and hard before accepting the offer. Mira had long since left behind the world of high-stakes projects and abandoned her high-profile career for a simpler life. But the call had come anyway, and here she was. Seated around her were others she didn't yet know. Captain Zara Malik, tall and poised in her flight suit, with an expression that revealed nothing. Young Eva Park, the diplomat who looked barely old enough to vote, let alone be in the company of global officials. And Otto Hargrove, the rugged technician, looking slightly out of place in his worn work clothes among these professionals. And of course, Dr. Harper himself, the one who'd set all this in motion with his late-night discovery. Harper cleared his throat. Thank you all for being here. I'll be blunt. Project Lifeboat is our only hope. I won't sugarcoat it. The odds are slim. This rogue planet, it's like nothing we've ever seen, and time is against us. A silence followed. Mira could feel the tension in the room, the fear hovering beneath each breath. Captain Malik broke the quiet. What are our next steps? How do we even start building these habitats, and who's going to pilot them? Harper leaned forward. That's where each of you comes in. We have the beginnings of a plan, but we need minds like yours to see it through. Mira, your expertise will be critical in designing the systems to support human life in deep space. Captain Malik, you'll be responsible for leading the crew and managing conditions on board. And Eva, you'll help us navigate the uncharted waters of making tough decisions on who boards and who doesn't. Otto shifted in his seat, clearing his throat. And me, I fix cars and weld things, not exactly space-worthy credentials. Mira looked over at him, her voice even. Trust me, there will be plenty to fix and weld. Lifeboats aren't as glamorous as they sound. As the meeting drew on, the scale of the task ahead became clearer. Earth's best engineers, astronauts, and politicians had a daunting challenge. They were tasked with building something that didn't yet exist, a massive, self-sustaining space habitat that could survive the void for as long as it took to find a new home. After hours of tense discussion, the team emerged from the meeting with heads buzzing and hearts heavy. Outside, the sky was a bright blue, a mocking contrast to the bleakness of their mission. As they walked out, Eva caught up with Mira, her young face a mask of determination. You really think we have a chance? She asked. Mira paused, glancing back at the distant mountains framing the city skyline. I don't know, she said honestly, but I know we have no other choice. And with that, they dispersed, each bearing the weight of humanity's survival. Their journey had begun into the abyss that awaited. The world had changed overnight. From bustling cities to remote villages, humanity was now united by a common fate. The countdown to Earth's final days loomed over everything, sparking a mix of panic, grief, and, for some, a spark of defiance. Project Lifeboat had become a global priority, but resources were limited. Only a fraction of the population would survive the journey. In a heavily guarded government facility, the Project Lifeboat team met again, this time joined by top scientists, engineers, and global leaders. Rows of screens lined the walls, displaying blueprints, resource projections, and lists of essential personnel, mathematically selected profiles of humanity's best and brightest. Mira Shen tapped her pen on the table, eyes locked on a massive digital schematic of the lifeboats. They were colossal, self-contained arcs, equipped with artificial gravity, advanced filtration systems, and every safeguard they could manage in such a short time. But something nagged at her. "These habitats may hold 10,000 people each," she said, breaking the room's silence, "but we've never tested them for such extreme conditions. If we run into problems mid-journey, there won't be a second chance." Dr. Harper leaned forward, his voice low. "I understand your concerns, Mira, but we have to take the risk. Humanity's survival depends on it." Captain Zara Malik looked up from her tablet. "What about pilots? Navigation, maintenance crews? How are we selecting them?" Eva Park answered, her voice clear and strong. "We've drafted a plan, but it's imperfect. We're prioritizing essential skills, engineering, medicine, agriculture, anything that supports life. But beyond that, the selection will have to be randomized. We can't play gods here." The room fell into an uneasy quiet. Even though they knew survival meant making impossible choices, none of them felt comfortable with the weight of those decisions. Back at her makeshift lab, Mira pored over calculations late into the night. One flaw kept creeping back into her design: oxygen filtration. If it failed at any point, thousands of people would be lost to the vacuum of space. She scribbled on her notepad, desperate for a solution, when a knock at the door startled her. It was Otto Hargrove, holding a thermos of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said, a small smile softening his gruff demeanor. "Looks like you're in deep." Mira managed a grateful nod, taking a long sip. "Thanks, Otto. Oxygen systems aren't as reliable as I'd like, and the higher-ups won't approve the extra materials we need for fail-safe measures." Otto scratched his chin. "You give me a list of what you need. I might know a guy who can acquire some extra materials." She chuckled. "I'll hold you to that." Their exchange was interrupted by the sound of the city alarm sirens, an increasingly common occurrence as global governments rehearsed evacuation plans. Mira's heart raced, knowing that with each alarm, they were one step closer to launching the lifeboats and leaving Earth behind. As the lifeboats neared completion, Captain Malik led the crew in intensive simulations. The stakes were higher than anything she'd ever faced, and she wasn't about to take risks with an untrained team. The simulators, cramped and clinical, mimicked the conditions they would experience once aboard the real lifeboats. "Brace for zero-G re-entry," Malik instructed, her voice calm and authoritative. She watched her team carefully, noting the ones who adapted quickly and the ones who struggled. Space wasn't just a technical challenge, it demanded mental resilience. One recruit panicked, flailing as the simulated artificial gravity cut out. Malik stepped forward, gripping the young woman's shoulders. "Focus on your breathing," she said, her voice steady. "We're going to get through this, but you need to trust the process." Later that evening, Malik found herself back at the control center, watching the footage of Earth on 10F the screens. The once familiar blue and green orb was now marred by erratic weather patterns and violent seismic shifts. It was as if the planet itself knew its end was near. Eva Park had the unenviable task of addressing the lifeboat selection criteria. She reviewed thousands of profiles: scientists, teachers, doctors, engineers, artists, and families. The enormity of it all weighed on her, each decision feeling like a life-or-death judgment. She found herself alone in the briefing room, skimming through a dossier. Each page was a person, a life. Her finger paused over a photo of a young family, a mother and father holding their small daughter. No special skills, no qualifications to justify a place on the lifeboat. She exhaled, setting the file aside. This wasn't just numbers, it was humanity itself, distilled down to cold statistics. Later that evening, she called a press conference, announcing the framework for Project Lifeboat's selection process. Protesters gathered outside, demanding fairness, questioning the criteria, and accusing the government of prioritizing the elite. Eva's calm facade never wavered, But inside, every accusation stung. "The truth is, we don't have enough space," she told the cameras. "We're doing our best to preserve humanity, but this is not a perfect plan. If we are to survive, we must act swiftly and make sacrifices." By the end of the month, the lifeboats were complete. Each stood on massive platforms, towers of steel and polymer, casting shadows over the workers who had poured their lives into this project. Some whispered prayers, others stared in awe, hoping these structures would defy the odds and preserve what was left of humankind. In a quiet moment, Dr. Harper, Captain Malik, Mira, Eva, and Otto gathered by one of the lifeboats. They shared a look of mutual understanding and respect, their roles now more than mere assignments. They had become protectors, a last line of defense for humanity's survival. As they prepared for launch day, Harper addressed the group. "No one knows what we'll face out there, but we've come this far, and now we carry the responsibility of every person who won't make this journey. Let's make it count." They nodded in silence, their resolve steeling for what lay ahead. And as the final countdown began, the world held its breath, watching as humanity took its first steps into the unknown abyss. The air was thick with tension as Earth's final days counted down. Crowds gathered at the lifeboat launch sites, a blend of desperation, sorrow, and a flicker of hope on every face. Those lucky enough to be chosen for the lifeboats clutched their boarding passes, while those left behind shouted pleas, held signs, or simply watched in stunned silence. Eva Park stood before a crowd, her heart heavy. She was tasked with addressing the masses, the ones not selected to board. She felt their eyes bore into her, and their pain echoed inside her chest. But she forced herself to speak, knowing her words would be small comfort at best. "Today, we embark on a journey we never could have anticipated," she began, her voice amplified across the platform. "We carry each of you with us, not just in our hearts but in our commitment to keep humanity alive. We leave Earth, but we will never forget it. We will honor it in every breath we take among the stars." Her words hung in the air, but the reaction was muted. A few nods, some tearful stares, and the undeniable simmering grief of those left behind. She looked down, blinking back tears, then turned to join the others on the platform. Inside the lifeboat hangar, Mira Shen was making last-minute checks. She moved quickly, her eyes darting over screens and consoles, checking everything twice. The oxygen filtration system, the core reactor, the artificial gravity stabilizers. Each system was a critical piece of their fragile survival. Otto Hargrove worked beside her, carefully packing emergency toolkits. He'd managed to acquire additional supplies that Mira had requested, extra filters, ration packs, and backup power cells. They both knew every ounce counted, and that these supplies could make the difference between life and death. "Do you think it'll hold?" Otto asked, glancing up from his work. Mira hesitated, her fingers brushing the smooth surface of the reactor console. "It has to," she replied, though the uncertainty gnawed at her. "We've done everything we can." As the final hour approached, Captain Zara Malik gathered her crew in the command deck. Each member stood tense, awaiting her words. This was more than a launch. It was an exodus from the only home they had ever known. "Listen up," Malik said, her voice steady. "In a few minutes, we leave Earth behind. Some of us may never see it again. But our job is to make sure that humanity doesn't just survive, we thrive. Each of you has a role to play. Trust in your training. Trust in each other. No one here is alone." The crew responded with nods, a sense of unity forming as they prepared to face the unknown together. Dr. Elias Harper stood to the side, taking a last quiet look at Earth on the screen, a blue and green sphere scarred with storms and tremors. He felt a pang of sadness, the reality of leaving behind everything he had ever known finally sinking in. With mere minutes left, the chosen boarded in orderly lines, each carrying only what they could fit in a small bag. Families clutched each other, children held onto parents, and people shared one last look at the world they were leaving. Among them were artists, engineers, farmers, scientists, and the hopeful sparks of human culture. Eva was among the last to board. As she climbed up the gangway, she caught sight of a young girl in the crowd, clutching her mother's hand with wide, tear-filled eyes. The sight drove home the enormity of the sacrifice. For a brief moment, Eva faltered, wondering if all of this was truly worth it. But then she remembered why she was there, to give humanity a future, however small the hope. When the airlocks finally sealed, a silence blanketed the lifeboat. Thousands of people stood packed together, breaths hushed, their gaze fixed on the screens projecting Earth's surface. Outside, the crowds of those left behind watched in silence, clinging to each other for strength. "Prepare for launch," came Captain Malik's voice over the intercom. Her tone was calm, but there was an underlying urgency that everyone could feel. Mira took her position at the systems console, her fingers hovering over the controls. She felt every jolt and vibration as the lifeboat powered up. In her mind, she reviewed the entire system, mentally bracing herself for any failures. Then the engines roared to life, and a shudder swept through the vessel as it lifted from Earth's surface. For a few agonizing moments, the pressure was crushing, the force of the ascent squeezing the breath from everyone's lungs. Then, just as suddenly, they broke through the atmosphere, entering the weightless vastness of space. Inside the lifeboat, people gasped, clutching their seats. Through the portholes, they could see Earth slowly shrinking, the planet glowing beneath them, both beautiful and heartbreakingly fragile. In silence, they watched as their home drifted farther and farther away. Once they reached a stable orbit, Dr. Harper made his way to the observatory, joining Mira, Captain Malik, and Eva. Together, they stood at the viewing port, staring back at Earth. The planet was visibly unstable, clouds swirling in erratic patterns, earthquakes creating faint lines of dust and debris visible even from space. "It's like a dying star," Harper murmured, unable to look away. They watched in collective silence, hearts heavy. And then, slowly, it began. First, there was a faint flash along the horizon, then a tremor that rippled across the continents. The entire planet seemed to shift, as if groaning under a weight too heavy to bear. Pieces began to break off, small at first, then entire land masses, swallowed by the planet's fiery core. The rogue planet's gravitational pull, now directly impacting Earth's tectonic structure, tore it apart from within. And then, in one blinding flash, Earth shattered. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. And then the lifeboat's sensors lit up, detecting the shockwave of debris and energy that radiated from the explosion. Mira immediately activated the shield systems, her fingers moving with practiced precision, while Malik issued orders to stabilize their position. Through the port, they watched as the fragments of Earth scattered, a silent cascade of dust and rock floating outward in the abyss. Their home, gone. Inside the lifeboat, people held each other, weeping silently as they processed the loss. Eva made her way through the crowd, offering quiet words of comfort, reminding them of why they had left, to survive, to build anew. Otto, meanwhile, moved through the mechanical bay, checking for any damage from the shockwave. He shared quiet glances with the other technicians, understanding that their job now held even greater weight. They were not just maintaining a ship, they were preserving the remnants of humanity. As the initial shock wore off, Captain Malik called a gathering in the main hall. Thousands gathered, standing shoulder to shoulder, listening as her voice echoed across the lifeboat. "We are the last of Earth," she said, her voice clear. "But we are also its beginning. Our world may be gone, but we carry it with us, in our memories, in our hearts, in our culture. Each of you represents the hope of a new beginning. Together, we will survive. We will honor Earth by thriving wherever we may go." A soft murmur of agreement spread through the crowd, and as they looked at each other, strangers bonded by the shared loss, they found a spark of hope. However fragile, the emptiness of space stretched out before them, an infinite black canvas dotted with distant stars. Inside the lifeboat, the initial shock and sorrow had given way to a quiet, uneasy calm. Survival now depended on unity, discipline, and the delicate balance of resources. Captain Zara Malik stood in the command deck, gazing at the vastness surrounding them. She felt the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. The thousands of lives aboard this vessel were now her sole duty, and the stakes were as high as they could be. This wasn't just another mission. This was humanity's last stand. She turned to Mira Shen, who was running checks on the oxygen and power systems. "Status report, Shen," Mira nodded, though her expression was tired. "We're stable for now. Oxygen, power, temperature, all systems are running within the acceptable range. But we're pushing our limits, Captain, if anything critical fails." Her voice trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. Malik placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll handle it, Mira. You've done incredible work. You all have." Mira offered a small, grateful smile before returning to her screens, running her fingers over every switch and dial. She knew better than anyone that even the smallest error could lead to catastrophe. Life on the lifeboat was a harsh adjustment. People were cramped, sleeping in shifts, and rations were scarce. Those aboard were assigned roles, some as engineers and mechanics, others as medical personnel, and the rest as support staff. The concept of idle time no longer existed. Every minute was spent in service to survival. Eva Park had taken on the unofficial role of morale officer, keeping spirits high in the face of uncertainty. She moved through the crowds in the common areas, listening to grievances, calming fears, and sharing stories of Earth. Some remembered Earth's sunsets, others the smell of rain or the sound of waves crashing against a shore. Eva encouraged them to hold on to these memories, to keep Earth alive in their hearts. One day, as she sat with a group of children, Eva told them about the animals they'd left behind. There were creatures on Earth, giant, gentle ones called elephants, little singing ones called birds, and fish that glowed in the dark, deep in the oceans. One day, when we find a new planet, we'll see new creatures, and maybe, just maybe, we'll bring a piece of Earth with us. The children listened with wide eyes, their faces reflecting both wonder and a deep, aching sadness. They had left behind a world they barely knew. Captain Malik called a private meeting with Dr. Harper, Mira, and Otto. They gathered in a cramped conference room with walls lined with navigational charts and status monitors. The low hum of the lifeboat systems was the only sound in the background. "We're facing new challenges," Malik began, her tone firm. "People are struggling with confinement, the lack of privacy, the pressure. We need a way to keep them focused, to prevent any incidents." Dr. Harper nodded. "Psychologically, prolonged isolation in space is dangerous. We're seeing early signs of cabin fever, anxiety, even depression among some passengers. We need regular routines, perhaps group activities, to keep minds occupied." Mira sighed. "The systems are fragile, but we could organize maintenance shifts for people to help out. It's tedious work, but it might help them feel useful." Otto grinned. "Nothing like a little manual labor to keep folks grounded, or as close to it as we can get out here." They agreed to set up schedules that would involve everyone on board in the lifeboat's daily operations. By giving people a purpose, they hoped to keep morale up and reduce the risk of unrest. One night, while running his usual diagnostics, Dr. Harper detected something strange, a faint signal, barely readable but unmistakably artificial. He adjusted the receiver, filtering out cosmic noise until the signal came through more clearly. His RT raced. There was a repeating pattern in the signal, something he recognized as a basic form of communication. Immediately, he called Captain Malik, who rushed to the observatory. "Is it possible? Another vessel?" she asked, barely concealing her shock. Harper's face was pale. "It's an unknown frequency, but I'd say it's alien, and they're reaching out." The implications were staggering. They had expected the journey to be long, possibly even lifetimes, before encountering another intelligent life form. But here, on the edges of Earth's orbit, something or someone had found them first. Malik took a deep breath, collecting her thoughts. "Let's try to establish communication. Keep the signal on a separate channel, and alert only key personnel until we know what we're dealing with." In the command deck, Malik, Eva, Harper, and Mira gathered as the ship's communication system filtered the incoming message. The audio feed crackled, a strange melodic tone that was both beautiful and unsettling. Then, to everyone's surprise, a voice spoke in broken English. "Greetings. From the Skrull Collective, we have detected your distress." The words were fragmented, but the intent was clear. Malik leaned forward, choosing her words carefully. "This is Captain Zara Malik of the human vessel, Lifeboat 1. We acknowledge your message. We seek a new home for our people. Our planet was destroyed." There was a long silence before the alien voice responded. "We understand. We, too, know loss. Perhaps we can assist." Everyone on the deck was silent, processing the magnitude of what had just happened. An alien species had not only acknowledged them, but offered help. Eva exchanged a hopeful glance with Malik. "Could this be the lifeline we need?" Malik nodded slowly, though the cautious expression on her face lingered. "It could be, but we need to tread carefully." As the days passed, communication between the lifeboat and the Skrull became more frequent. The Skrull were a technologically advanced species, nomadic in nature, traveling from star to star. They had seen many worlds and lost many of their own in interstellar conflicts. Their empathy for humanity's plight seemed genuine. In exchange for knowledge about Earth's ecosystems and the diversity of its life forms, the Skrull offered technical assistance to stabilize the lifeboat's life support systems. They provided schematics for improved air filtration, shared mineral purification techniques, and even helped boost the lifeboat's power efficiency. Mira and Otto worked tirelessly to incorporate these upgrades, amazed by the sophistication of Skrull technology. But even as the alliance grew, tension simmered. Some humans viewed the Skrull's help with suspicion, wary of their motives. Rumors spread of hidden agendas, whispers of alien control. Malik and Eva did their best to quell the unrest, but the seeds of doubt were planted. One night, a small group of dissenters approached Eva, voicing their concerns. "How do we know we can trust these aliens?" one of them asked, eyes blazing with anger. "They claim they want to help, but how do we know they aren't just using us?" Eva tried to calm them, explaining that the Skrull had saved their lives, that they owed them gratitude. But the dissenters were unmoved. They were afraid, and fear, she realized, was a powerful motivator. "I understand your concerns," she said softly. "But we must remember that this journey isn't about power or control. It's about survival. The Skrull aren't enemies unless we make them so." Her words pacified some, but the tension lingered. Deep in her heart, Eva worried that this alliance, while vital to their survival, might become a new kind of challenge. Humanity's struggle wasn't just with the vastness of space, but with the fears and mistrust lurking within. Captain Malik, recognizing the growing tension, made an announcement to the entire ship. "We have chosen to accept help from the Skrull. They are allies, and their assistance has made our survival possible. But I understand that change is frightening, and the unknown can breed doubt. I urge each of you to remember what we've endured and what lies ahead. If we are to survive, we must stand together, no matter what or who we face." Her words were a reminder of their shared goal, a call to unity. Slowly, the atmosphere aboard the lifeboat calmed, and the alliance with the Skrull became a symbol of hope rather than fear. As the lifeboat continued its journey, bolstered by Skrull technology, humanity found a renewed sense of purpose. The stars stretched out before them, and for the first time since leaving Earth, there was a glimmer of a future, one that lay in the uncharted void. The journey stretched on, the emptiness of space a constant, weighty presence around the lifeboat. Days turned into weeks, and the initial excitement over the gardens and sense of unity began to wane as the crew and passengers fell into a monotonous rhythm. Their sights were now set on reaching a new star system that Dr. Harper had identified, a faint glimmer of hope in the darkness. But the journey wasn't only about the destination. Every passing day demanded vigilance, resilience, and the acceptance of the unknown. Captain Zara Malik sat in the command deck, scanning the faint stars ahead, when Mira Shen entered, holding a datapad with a nervous expression. "We're getting strange readings," Mira said, glancing between the screen and the vastness outside the viewing port. "A low-frequency signal, rhythmic, and it's definitely not cosmic noise. It's almost like a ping, and it's getting closer." Malik's brow furrowed. "Closer? Are you saying it's moving?" Mira nodded, her fingers tapping anxiously against the datapad. "Yes, and it's targeting us directly. If it's artificial, it's someone's attempt at establishing contact." A tense silence filled the command deck. Malik felt the weight of the decision pressing on her. Humanity had no experience with intelligent alien life, and she had no idea if this would be a peaceful encounter or something far darker. "Send the signal through encryption, and get Harper here," she said finally. "Let's see if we can decode whatever they're trying to say." Minutes later, Dr. Harper arrived, quickly scanning the signal Mira had detected. It repeated in steady intervals, the pattern deliberate and precise. With each pass, the ping contained a slight variation, almost as if it were adapting to their equipment. After an hour of intense work, Harper managed to isolate a segment of the signal that contained a structured pattern. Translating it was difficult, but eventually, a few deciphered words appeared on the screen. "Human, distress assistance." Eva, who had been observing silently, whispered, "It's a message of help." Captain Malik's gaze remained fixed on the screen, suspicion mingling with wonder, or an invitation into something we can't see yet. The lifeboat crew decided to respond. They sent a carefully constructed message, briefly describing the destruction of Earth and their search for a new home. Then they waited, hours passing with no response. But just as Malik was about to suggest another attempt, the signal returned, and this time it was unmistakable. The words came through broken but clear enough. "Human vessel, this is the Azran Collective. We understand, loss, and offer assistance." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. None of them knew what the Azran Collective was, or why they would offer help. Malik held up a hand, her face unreadable as she formulated a response. "This is Captain Zara Malik of the human vessel Lifeboat 1. We accept your assistance and your understanding of loss. What do you propose?" There was a moment of silence before the voice returned, the tone almost serene. "Allow us to board." Captain Malik gathered her key crew members in the conference room, briefing them on the Azran message. Tensions ran high as each member voiced their concerns. Mira was the first to speak. "We don't know anything about them. They might be hostile, or they might carry diseases we can't fight. There are too many unknowns." Eva, ever the diplomat, offered a more hopeful perspective. "But this could be exactly what we need. They've shown empathy. They understand our plight. We could learn from them, maybe even get their help finding a planet." Otto shook his head, skeptical. "I don't like it. The second we let them on board, we lose control over our own ship." Malik listened, weighing every opinion. She knew the risks, but she also recognized the potential. If the Azran truly meant to help, this could be a lifeline for humanity. Finally, she spoke. "I'll allow them to board, but under strict protocols. Only a small delegation in a sealed section of the ship. Mira, I want you and Otto to handle the environment controls. Ensure no cross-contamination. Harper, you're on translation and communication. Eva, you'll meet them as our ambassador." The group fell silent, absorbing her decision. Malik hoped she'd made the right call. Hours later, a shimmering light appeared on the monitors, a small, elegant craft that seemed to fold into view as if stepping out of a hidden dimension. The Azran vessel docked with the lifeboat, its design unlike anything they'd seen. It was organic, almost alive, with smooth lines that pulsed faintly with light. In the sterile chamber prepared for their guests, Eva stood, flanked by Malik and Dr. Harper. They watched as the airlock hissed open, revealing two Azran beings. Tall and slender, with luminous eyes and skin that shimmered like polished stone, the Azran exuded an aura of calm and intelligence. The Azran stepped forward, their movements fluid and graceful. One of them raised a hand in what appeared to be a gesture of peace. "I am Ta'arin," the being said, its voice like a melodic hum. "We have traveled across galaxies, seeking to understand and preserve life. Your plight has touched us, and we extend our hand in friendship." Eva took a step forward, her heart racing. "I am Eva Park, representing the last of humanity. We are honored by your offer of friendship. We seek a new home, a chance to rebuild." Ta'arin inclined its head. "We understand. We, too, once lost our world to forces beyond our control. We offer knowledge and resources to aid you in your journey, if you accept our guidance." Over the next few days, the Azran and the humans worked together to integrate the offered technology. The Azran shared advanced filtration methods that vastly improved the lifeboat's air and water systems, and they introduced energy-efficient modules that doubled the ship's power output. Mira and Otto were in awe, struggling to keep up with the Azran's understanding of technology. The Azran also offered medical technology that promised to strengthen the immune systems of the passengers, a precaution against the rigors of prolonged space travel. Their presence was unsettling to some, but the undeniable improvements to the lifeboat's systems brought a cautious optimism to the crew. But not everyone trusted the Azran. Lucian Hayes, the dissenter, stirred the crowd with his skepticism. "Why would they help us? What do they gain from this? For all we know, we're just an experiment to them. They could be using us to find a new world for themselves." Malik did her best to quell the unrest, reminding everyone of their precarious situation. But the seeds of doubt were there, and they continued to grow. As part of the exchange, Ta'arin invited Dr. Harper and Eva to visit the Azran vessel. When they entered, They were struck by the ship's unique design, a fluid, organic space that pulsed with faint light, every surface smooth and warm. Inside, Ta'arin led them to a series of intricate holograms displaying images of a lush, green planet. This was our world, Azrana, before it was consumed by a cosmic event we call the Great Dissolution, Ta'arin explained. We became nomads, bound to the stars, searching for knowledge and kindred souls. Eva and Harper listened, captivated. The Azran story mirrored their own, a tale of loss and resilience. Ta'arin's voice grew softer. It is why we extend our aid to you. We understand that survival is only the first step. To truly live, you must rebuild. Harper felt a flicker of hope. With your help, maybe we can. Maybe humanity has a chance. Ta'arin looked at him with a solemn expression. But beware. The journey is treacherous. The darkness holds dangers, not all of them as welcoming as we. Despite the Azran's help, distrust lingered. Rumors spread of the Azran's true intentions. Some believed they were seeking to manipulate humanity, while others saw them as benevolent saviors. Lucian's faction grew louder, calling for restrictions on Azran access to the lifeboat systems. One night, a group of Lucian's followers attempted to sabotage the Azran technology, fearing its influence. They were caught and detained, but the incident left a mark on the alliance. Ta'arin's people were aware of the unrest, though they did not react with hostility. In a private conversation, Malik asked Ta'arin, "Why do you tolerate our doubts?" Ta'arin looked at her, their luminous eyes filled with a strange, ancient sorrow. "Because we too have doubted in the past. Fear is a seed that grows in unfamiliar soil. We understand, and we choose to help despite it." As the lifeboat continued its journey, strengthened by the Azran's technology, the passengers began to see their future in a new light. The ship, once a fragile haven, was now fortified. They had allies, a direction, and a glimmer of hope. In a final act of diplomacy, Eva held a gathering where both humans and Azran shared their stories. People spoke of Earth, of Azrana, of their shared history of survival and loss. It was a fragile peace, but a peace nonetheless. As the stars stretched before them, humanity began to believe that perhaps, in the vast darkness, they might find a place to call home. The journey stretched on, the lifeboat now bolstered by Azran technology and knowledge. But despite the improvements, tension simmered just beneath the surface. The Azran's continued presence was a source of division among the passengers. Some saw them as saviors, while others harbored deep suspicions. Captain Zara Malik understood the importance of unity. Their survival depended not only on the ship's systems, but on their ability to work together. And so, in the hope of fostering greater understanding, she called a meeting to discuss the next phase of their journey with both the human crew and the Azran delegation. In the command center, Ta'arin and their companion, Laura, projected a holographic map of the nearby star systems. The holograms showed a planet within a neighboring system with a faint atmosphere and promising mineral content, a place the Azran believed could be cultivated for human life. "This planet has potential," Ta'arin explained, gesturing to the small blue and green orb glowing in the hologram. "With our technology and your people's resilience, it could become a new home for humanity." Mira Shen studied the projection carefully, her fingers tapping thoughtfully. "What are the conditions on the surface?" "It will not be easy," Ta'arin replied, a hint of warning in their tone. "The atmosphere is thin, and radiation levels are higher than on Earth. It will take years of work and adaptation to make it fully habitable, but it is possible." Captain Malik looked around at her crew, sensing the hope mixed with trepidation in their eyes. "We have little choice but to try," she said, her voice steady. "We're running low on resources, and drifting aimlessly isn't an option." Eva Park, standing at Malik's side, felt a pang of anticipation. The idea of building a new world was daunting, but it was also the first concrete hope they'd had since Earth's destruction. As they approached the planet, the crew worked tirelessly, adapting systems and gathering resources for a controlled landing. Mira and Otto led teams to modify the lifeboat's hull, reinforcing it to withstand the entry into the planet's thin atmosphere. During the preparations, Lucian Hayes and his faction remained vocal. He organized small gatherings in the corridors, voicing doubts about the Azran's true motives. Despite Malik's best efforts to promote unity, Lucian's influence was growing. "They're steering us into a trap," Lucian argued one evening. They're giving us technology, yes, but what are they taking from us in return? Who's to say they aren't using us as their pawns? Eva confronted him after one of these gatherings, her patience worn thin. Lucian, enough. The Azeron have done nothing but help us. I understand your concerns, but this fear-mongering is tearing us apart. Lucian met her gaze, unyielding. Maybe you're willing to hand over humanity's future, Eva. I'm not. Despite her frustration, Eva recognized Lucian's words resonated with a portion of the passengers. She knew she had to tread carefully. Lucian's defiance posed a threat to the fragile alliance, but forceful opposition might only fuel his cause. At last, the day came for the descent. Tension ran high as the lifeboat's engines powered up, directing the massive vessel toward the planet below. The ship shuddered as it entered the atmosphere, turbulent winds buffeting the hull. Mira and Otto monitored every reading, fingers poised to adjust as necessary. The ship broke through the thin layer of clouds, revealing a barren but beautiful landscape, mountains of pale stone, vast open plains, and skies painted in hues of lavender and rose. It was nothing like Earth, yet there was a quiet, stark beauty to it. The landing was rough, but the lifeboat touched down safely, its landing gear digging into the planet's rocky soil. The crew let out a collective sigh of relief, and for the first time since leaving Earth, they stepped onto solid ground. Within days, the crew set up preliminary outposts around the lifeboat. They built solar panels, installed water purifiers, and began small-scale hydroponic farms using seeds they'd saved. It was difficult, grueling work, but for the first time, they had a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. The Azeron lent their expertise, introducing techniques for radiation shielding and adaptive shelters. However, Ta'arin and Laura made it clear that the work would be humanity's own. While the Azeron would help, they wanted humans to adapt and thrive on their own terms. "This world is yours to shape," Ta'arin said to Malik one evening as they watched the construction from a ridge. "We will provide guidance, but the spirit of this new home must be yours." Malik nodded, understanding the weight of their words. The Azeron were offering them more than technology. They were offering them the chance to rediscover themselves. Despite their progress, the cracks in the unity among the crew grew wider. Some passengers grew frustrated with the Azeron's decision to let humanity struggle, feeling that they should provide more direct assistance. Others, like Lucian, continued to spread doubt about the Azeron's intentions. One night, a group of Lucian's followers vandalized one of the Azeron structures, fearing it was meant to spy on them. The act sent shockwaves through the community. Malik confronted Lucian directly, furious. "Enough," she said, her voice sharp with anger. "You're undermining everything we've worked for. Do you realize what's at stake?" Lucian's eyes narrowed. "I'm protecting our people. We don't know what they want. They keep us at arm's length, making us work for everything while they watch from the sidelines." Eva stepped forward, her voice steady but filled with conviction. "Lucian, the Azeron have given us every tool we need to survive. If we keep doubting them, we'll tear ourselves apart before we even get a chance to rebuild." Lucian met her gaze, unyielding. "Then maybe some of us are better off alone." The confrontation ended without resolution, but Malik knew they'd reached a critical point. The future of their community was on a knife's edge, and if they didn't find common ground soon, they would risk losing everything. As tensions simmered, Dr. Harper continued to study the planet, analyzing mineral samples and atmospheric data. One day, he made a discovery that chilled him. Beneath the surface, he detected faint traces of radiation and remnants of ancient structures buried deep underground. "Captain, I don't think this planet is as uninhabited as we thought," Harper said, his voice laced with unease. "These readings suggest a past civilization, or something left behind." Malik listened carefully, a sense of dread settling over her. The thought of another presence, whether ancient or hidden, added a new layer of uncertainty. She met with Ta'arin, asking if the Azeron knew anything about the planet's past. Ta'arin's gaze darkened. "We suspected remnants, but we did not want to influence your perceptions. The past of this world is a mystery, and some mysteries are best approached with caution." That night, Malik shared the information with her crew. Lucian seized upon it immediately, using it as proof that the Azeron had been withholding information. They knew this place was dangerous, he argued, and they led us here anyway. Who knows what else they're hiding? The crowd grew restless, their fear stoked by Lucien's words. Eva and Malik worked to calm them, but the seeds of doubt had taken root deeply. Later, Eva confronted Ta'arin. You knew about the remnants here. Why didn't you tell us? Ta'arin looked at her with their calm, unblinking gaze. We wanted humanity to make its own choices, to confront its fears without guidance. If this world is to become your new home, you must claim it without outside influence. Eva wanted to argue, but found herself unable. She saw the wisdom in Ta'arin's words, though it left her conflicted. The path forward, DB1, they would need to forge on their own, but the cost of independence was high. Despite the challenges, the crew pressed on, their determination undimmed. They built shelters, adapted to the harsh environment, and slowly, the new planet began to feel like home. The struggle brought them closer, forging bonds that transcended fear and doubt. Over time, even Lucien's influence waned. He became a figure of resilience, a reminder of the cautious pragmatism they had left behind. As for the Azran, they became distant friends, guiding only when asked, allowing humanity to grow into its own. One evening, Eva gathered the crew around a fire under the alien sky, its stars casting strange constellations above them. She spoke of Earth, of the journey they had made, and the new world they were shaping. This is our home now, she said, her voice steady. We've left our past behind, and we're building something new. We are all that remains of humanity, and together we will endure. The crew raised their glasses, the firelight casting their faces in warm hues. They knew their journey wasn't over, but they had found their footing, their purpose. They were no longer just survivors, they were pioneers. And as they looked out over the rocky plains and up at the strange alien stars, they knew they had finally found a place to call home. The new world, now named Nova Terra by the passengers, was beautiful but hostile. The thin atmosphere and strange dusty terrain were unforgiving, demanding constant vigilance from everyone aboard the lifeboat. Life was a continuous cycle of work and adaptation, each day presenting new challenges that tested the limits of human endurance. Captain Zara Malik organized daily rotations for resource management, scouting missions, and research. The Azran, ever watchful, had stepped back to allow humanity to establish their own routines, only intervening when necessary. However, the Azran's silence fed the suspicion and tension that still lingered among some of the passengers. Dr. Harper remained fixated on the ancient ruins he'd detected underground. His research suggested that Nova Terra had once supported a complex civilization that vanished long ago. Harper's team conducted excavations, carefully uncovering fragments of strange, advanced technology buried deep beneath the planet's surface. One morning, Harper discovered something that sent a shiver down his spine, an ancient tablet covered in inscriptions that glowed faintly when exposed to light. He could decipher only fragments of it, but the message was clear, an ominous warning about the dangers of awakening the sleepers. He immediately sought out Captain Malik. "We've been digging too deep," he said, his voice trembling. "There's something buried here, something powerful and possibly dangerous. The inhabitants of this planet left warnings, messages for anyone who came after them. They call it the Sleepers." Malik listened, her expression growing grim. "And the Azran never mentioned any of this?" Harper shook his head. "Not a word." The captain called for a private meeting with Ta'arin, confronting them about the discovery. "We are aware of the Sleepers," Ta'arin admitted. "They are remnants of an ancient power, one that we do not fully understand. Our own studies have shown that disturbing them could be catastrophic. We did not tell you because we believed it was best for humanity to make its own choices. The path to knowledge is one fraught with risk." Malik was furious. "You left us in the dark, knowing what might be hidden here?" Ta'arin's gaze was unreadable. "Knowledge is power, but it is also responsibility. We believed you were ready to face that choice." Malik left the meeting troubled. The crew needed to know about the risks, but she worried that Lucien and his followers might use this information to incite panic. Captain Malik decided to bring the core team together: Dr. Harper, Mira, Otto, Eva, and a few trusted crew members. She briefed them on the ancient warnings, her tone steady and resolved. "We may have inherited more than we bargained for with this planet," she said. but we are here to build a new home. We've come too far to turn back now. The Azran believe we must make our own choices. So let's make the choice to be cautious but continue our work. We'll avoid unnecessary excavation, but we won't let fear dictate our actions. Mira nodded, her jaw set in determination. We're stronger than any old ghost this planet may hold. We've adapted this far. We'll adapt again. Otto, who had never put much faith in warnings or superstition, shrugged. Just tell me what needs fixing, and I'll make sure it holds. We didn't leave Earth just to be scared off by a dusty piece of rock. With the crew unified, Malik instructed them to keep the discovery of the sleepers under wraps. Their survival depended on unity, and she couldn't risk panic spreading among the passengers. Despite their best efforts, rumors of the sleepers began to circulate. Lucian's followers latched onto the idea, spreading fear and distrust among the settlement. Lucian himself began holding private meetings, questioning Malik's leadership and accusing her of hiding critical information. One evening, Lucian confronted Malik in front of a gathering of passengers, his voice sharp wit, accusation. Our captain has been withholding the truth from us. There are things on this planet that could destroy us, and she refuses to warn you. She claims to be leading us to a new life, but at what cost? Malik, though shaken by the public confrontation, held her ground. This world presents dangers, yes, but we've faced them before, and we'll face them again. The choice is between letting fear divide us or standing together to build something that will outlast us. Lucian's followers murmured, uncertain but swayed by Malik's resolve. Lucian shot her a look of disdain but stepped back, though his followers continued to stoke unrest in the following days. A few weeks later, a research team led by Dr. Harper accidentally triggered something buried in one of the excavation sites. While inspecting an ancient conduit, they activated a faint pulse that rippled through the ground. The machinery around them hummed to life briefly before shutting down, leaving the crew spooked. Harper returned to the lifeboat with Mira, both of them visibly shaken. They reported to Malik and Eva, explaining what had happened. It was as if the machinery recognized us, Harper said, his voice filled with both excitement and dread. But whatever we woke up, it feels incomplete, as if it's waiting for something. Mira shuddered. This technology is beyond us. If it's tied to the sleepers, we could be in serious trouble. Malik immediately ordered the site sealed, forbidding further research in that area. She feared they'd stirred something that should have remained dormant. In the days that followed, strange occurrences began happening throughout the settlement. The nights grew colder, the atmosphere fluctuated, and an eerie hum seemed to pulse from the ground at intervals. Passengers reported nightmares, visions of shadows moving beneath the ground, of an ancient presence watching them. Lucian's followers grew bolder, claiming the curse of the sleepers was now upon them. Panic began to spread, and some demanded that the Azran take them off Nova Terra altogether. Captain Malik met with Ta'aran once more, pleading for guidance. We don't know what we've awakened, Ta'aran said softly, a trace of sorrow in their voice. But I believe this is a trial of your own making. The sleepers are tied to this planet, and to disturb them may have consequences beyond our understanding. Malik's frustration grew, but she knew the Azran wouldn't intervene further. The humans were left to face their own fate. Malik gathered the entire settlement, aware that she needed to make a decisive statement to calm the growing unrest. We are facing an unknown danger, she said, her voice carrying across the gathering. But we did not come here to turn back at the first sign of hardship. We are humans, survivors. We've faced the destruction of our world, the emptiness of space, and the challenges of this planet. Whatever we awakened, we can endure it together. She looked out over the crowd, her gaze steady and unyielding. We have a choice, to let fear rule us, or to stand united, no matter what lies beneath. This is our world now. If there are secrets buried here, then we will face them, together. Her words struck a chord. The crowd murmured in agreement, and some of Lucian's followers exchanged uncertain glances. The community, though frightened, found strength in Malik's resolve. That night, the ground trembled as if the planet itself was stirring. A deep, resonant hum echoed from the excavation site, and a faint light seeped from the earth, casting an eerie glow over the settlement. Harper and Mira rushed to the command deck, monitoring the readings. "It's coming from beneath us," Harper whispered, watching as the energy levels spiked. The lights flickered, and then a low, otherworldly voice seemed to fill the air, a voice that resonated through every structure, every fiber of their being. "We are the echoes of Nova Terra. We are the sleepers." The Rue and passengers listened in stunned silence, hearts pounding as the voice continued. "We existed before you, and we have seen the rise and fall of many. Your arrival has awakened us, and now you must prove your right to remain." As the voice faded, a final message echoed through the settlement. "In the depths lies our test. Only those who are worthy may stay." The message left everyone shaken, the weight of the challenge hanging over them. The sleepers had given humanity a choice, not one of their own making, but one they had no choice but to face. In the days that followed, Captain Malik organized teams to prepare for the test, though none knew what awaited them. Lucian's resistance softened, and he even approached Malik, offering his expertise and followers for the mission. "This is beyond any of us," he admitted quietly. "If we're going to survive, we'll need every hand we can get." Malik accepted his offer, knowing the test would require unity more than ever. Together, they braced for what lay ahead, the weight of Nova Terra's history pressing upon them. As they readied for the unknown, they knew that their survival would come down to one question: were they worthy to call this world their own? In the depths below, the legacy of the sleepers awaited, ready to decide humanity's fate. The settlement buzzed with anxious anticipation. Beneath their feet, something ancient and powerful lay waiting, demanding proof of humanity's worthiness to inhabit this world. Captain Zara Malik and her crew prepared to descend into the depths of Nova Terra, where they would face the mysterious test left by the sleepers. The message from the ancient beings had stirred fear and hope in equal measure. Though terrified, the passengers found solace in the knowledge that they would face this trial together. United by purpose, they steeled themselves for whatever lay below. Mira Shen led the engineering team in retrofitting equipment for the expedition. The planet's deep caverns were an unknown frontier, and they couldn't risk going unprepared. She modified protective suits, outfitting them with advanced sensors to monitor environmental changes, radiation levels, and even psychological responses. The sleepers' test was an enigma, and Mira was determined to anticipate any hazards. Captain Malik assembled a small but capable team to join her in the descent: Dr. Harper for his expertise in deciphering the ancient symbols, Otto for his mechanical skills, and Eva Park as their ambassador in case communication was necessary. Surprisingly, Lucian Hayes volunteered to join them, his expression hardened with newfound resolve. As the team gathered, Malik addressed them. "We don't know what we'll find down there, but this is our chance to prove ourselves to the sleepers and to each other. Remember, we face this challenge together. Whatever happens, we don't leave anyone behind." They nodded, some casting wary glances at Lucian, whose recent confrontations with Malik had left a lingering tension. But in this moment, they were bound by a shared mission. The entrance to the underground caverns was a narrow, dark fissure near the original excavation site. Mira rigged a winch system to help the team descend, and one by one, they lowered themselves into the unknown. The air grew cooler as they descended, the only sound their breathing and the faint hum of their equipment. Pale, phosphorescent moss clung to the walls, casting an eerie blue glow on the stone. It was both beautiful and unsettling, as if they were entering a realm untouched by time. After hours of careful descent, they reached a massive stone doorway inscribed with symbols similar to those Harper had studied on the tablet. He approached the markings, running his fingers along the intricate patterns. "These symbols," he whispered, "they speak of trials, of balance and resilience. It's almost as if this place measures something intangible." Eva's voice was quiet. "It's a test of who we are." As Harper examined the inscriptions further, the stone door began to vibrate, slowly sliding open. The team exchanged tense looks, gripping their equipment tightly. Beyond the door lay a vast chamber bathed in a strange, ambient light that seemed to come from nowhere. The air was thick with an electric charge, prickling against their skin. As they entered the chamber, the light flickered, casting elongated shadows on the walls. Without warning, the shadows began to move independently, growing darker and more defined, taking the shapes of human figures. The shadows began to whisper, their voices merging into an unnerving chorus. Each person heard something different, their deepest fears, regrets, or moments of failure. For Malik, the whispers replayed the final moments of Earth, each voice a reminder of the countless lives she couldn't save. For Mira, it was her fear of failure, the looming responsibility of holding everyone's survival in her hands. Eva clenched her fists, breathing slowly to calm herself. She'd learned to face her fears in her role as a diplomat, but this experience was beyond anything she'd ever known. She whispered to herself, "This is a test. It's only a test." Harper, too, felt the darkness closing in, but he focused on the symbols carved into the walls. He recognized a phrase that translated roughly to, "Acknowledge, but do not surrender." The words resonated within him. "Everyone," he said, raising his voice above the murmurs. "These are only shadows, reflections of our own minds. If we acknowledge our fears without succumbing, they lose their power over us." Slowly, the team found their resolve, grounding themselves in each other's presence. As they faced their fears head-on, the shadows began to fade, the darkness receding until the chamber returned to its original glow. They had passed the first trial. The walls of the chamber shifted, revealing a narrow corridor that led to a second, smaller room. In the center of this room was a circular pedestal, upon which lay a collection of intertwined metal strands, forming a complex, tangled sphere. A voice filled the air, a low, resonant tone that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. "To pass this trial, you must separate the strands and weave them into one." The team exchanged glances, confusion flickering in their eyes. Otto approached the sphere, inspecting it closely. "It looks like each piece is locked into the next. We can't separate them alone. Each person will have to work on a different section, in perfect synchrony." They took their positions around the sphere, each gripping a section of the tangled strands. As they worked, they quickly realized that any movement affected the entire structure. The task required precision, patience, and absolute cooperation. Eva took a deep breath, speaking calmly to guide them. "Let's move slowly, follow the tension. We have to work as one, or we'll undo each other's progress." The task demanded intense concentration. At times, Lucian grew frustrated, his grip tightening as he struggled with the complex pattern. Otto gave him a reassuring nod. "Easy, Lucian, we're all in this together." Over time, they developed a rhythm, communicating in quiet voices, each trusting the other's instincts. Their frustrations melted away as they found their flow, the once chaotic strands transforming into a unified weave. When the final strand clicked into place, the pedestal glowed and the voice returned. "You have proven your bond. Only together can you build your future." They had passed the second trial. As they moved into the third chamber, they found a raised platform with two symbols carved into the stone, a flame and a well. On either side of the platform were two deep chasms that seemed to stretch endlessly downward. The voice echoed again, this time solemn and heavy. "Life is forged through sacrifice. To prove your worth, one of you must choose, the flame or the well. One path requires self-sacrifice, the other demands trust." The team stood in stunned silence, the weight of the words sinking in. Each option was shrouded in mystery, but it was clear that the decision would test their willingness to place the group above the individual. Captain Malik looked at her crew, her face resolute. "I will go," she said, her voice steady. "I led us here, and it's my responsibility." Eva stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, Zara, you don't have to do this alone. We'll choose together." Lucian, who had remained quiet, finally spoke, his voice calm. "This is about trust, isn't it? Whatever choice we make, we have to believe in it fully. We choose for all of us." After a long discussion, they decided on the well, a leap of faith into the unknown. Malik, as their leader, approached the edge of the chasm and took a steadying breath. "I trust each of you," she said, and with that she stepped into the darkness. The room fell silent as they waited, their hearts pounding. Moments passed, and then a warm light began to glow from the well. Malik reappeared, unharmed, a quiet smile on her face. "The well was a test of trust," she said. "They needed to know if we'd place our faith in one another." As the light in the chamber grew, the voice spoke one final time. "You have passed the trials of the sleepers. You have proven your unity, resilience, and trust. Nova Terra is yours to claim. May you honor it well." The team ascended to the surface, their spirits lifted. They emerged to find the entire settlement waiting, hope shining in their eyes. Eva stepped forward, sharing the story of the trials, of how they'd proven themselves worthy of Nova Terra. The news spread, igniting celebrations throughout the settlement. They had earned their place on this world, a place of their own. Lucian approached Malik quietly, a newfound respect in his eyes. "Captain," he said, his tone softer than before. "I questioned you, but today you showed us what it means to lead." Malik nodded, accepting his words with grace. She knew their journey was far from over, but this victory was a testament to humanity's strength. As the people of Nova Terra celebrated under the alien sky, they felt the presence of the sleepers, a reminder that they were not alone, but also a promise that they were home. And in the hearts of all, there was a shared understanding that they had been transformed, no longer just survivors, but pioneers with a future to build. With the trials of the sleepers behind them, the people of Nova Terra turned their focus to building a sustainable, thriving society. The echoes of their victory resounded through the community, transforming doubt into determination. United by their success, they faced the challenges of their new home with renewed resilience. But as they laid the foundations for their new world, they also found that some secrets of Nova Terra were still waiting to be uncovered, and some questions about the sleepers lingered, quietly stirring curiosity and a sense of wonder. Captain Zara Malik directed teams to expand their shelters, creating a centralized settlement that could accommodate everyone comfortably. The settlement, named New Horizons by popular vote, became the heart of the community's efforts. People carved paths, cleared land for crops, and assembled solar panels to harness the planet's intense sunlight. Otto took charge of fortifying the structures, repurposing materials from the lifeboat to strengthen walls and foundations. His hands, scarred and rough from years of labor, became a symbol of the work ethic that now permeated the settlement. "We've got good bones here," he said, glancing at the construction. "We'll make sure these homes stand for generations." Mira Shen developed new water filtration systems with the help of the Azran. They introduced concepts she'd never encountered before, like bioorganic filters that adapted to environmental changes. The Azran's methods were almost magical to Mira, and she worked day and night to integrate them into human technology. Despite his earlier opposition, Lucian Hayes had become one of the community's most dedicated workers. His skepticism had shifted to a fierce drive to protect their new world, and he led efforts to monitor resource usage and ensure long-term sustainability. Malik observed his transformation with a mixture of relief and admiration. But as weeks passed, the elation of success began to fade, replaced by the harsh realities of survival. The soil on Nova Terra was difficult to cultivate, and the plants brought from Earth struggled in the alien climate. Although the hydroponic farms inside the lifeboat produced some food, it was far from enough to sustain the entire settlement. Dr. Harper, who had been studying Nova Terra's ecosystem, proposed an experiment. "The sleepers left us clues to this planet's resources," he explained. "I believe some native plants might be compatible with our physiology, but we'll need time to test them." This idea sparked excitement among the settlers, who were eager to find ways to adapt to Nova Terra rather than force Earth's ways upon it. Harper, with the help of Eva Park, led a small team to identify and cultivate edible plants in the wild, experimenting with ways to make them safe for human consumption. However, not everyone trusted the sleepers' gifts. Some passengers feared that native plants might carry unforeseen toxins or biological threats. Malik, aware of these concerns, made sure that all new food sources were tested rigorously before they were introduced to the community. Despite her reassurances, whispers of doubt persisted. Nova Terra was still largely an enigma, and the settlers were keenly aware of the sleepers' presence, their legacy embedded in the planet's very soil. One evening, as Malik and her crew held a meeting to discuss agricultural progress, an alert sounded from the lifeboat's monitoring system. The ground began to tremble, a faint vibration that resonated throughout the settlement. The crew gathered on the outskirts of New Horizons, watching as a pulsing glow appeared on the horizon, emanating from the distant mountains. The glow had the same eerie quality as the light they'd seen in the depths during the trials. Harper was the first to speak. "It's the sleepers. They're still active." Lucian clenched his fists, eyes fixed on the glow. "They're watching us, testing us even now." Malik placed a hat, and on his shoulder, a quiet reminder of their bond forged in the trials. "If the sleepers are still observing, then we need to show them we're committed to building something lasting." The Azron had little insight into this phenomenon, which they called the sleeper's echo. According to Taran, the energy emitted by the ancient structures was a way for the sleepers to monitor the planet's inhabitants. But no one knew what this meant for the settlers or how the sleepers might intervene. Determined to understand the sleepers' intentions, Malik organized an expedition to the source of the glow in the mountains. She selected a small team, including Dr. Harper, Mira, Lucian, and Eva, each bringing their unique skills and perspectives. The journey was arduous. Nova Terra's terrain was harsh, with rocky paths, steep cliffs, and sudden, fierce winds that left them drained and on edge. But the glow in the distance was a guiding beacon, pulling them forward with an unspoken promise of revelation. As they climbed higher, they began to encounter more signs of the ancient civilization, strange symbols etched into the rock, the remnants of old pathways and curious mechanical devices, their purpose long lost to time. Harper took photos and notes, marveling at the intricate designs. After days of travel, they reached the source of the light. In a secluded valley between two peaks, they found a vast structure, a temple-like building carved into the mountainside, glowing softly in the twilight. The architecture was otherworldly, with sharp, angular forms and floating platforms that defied gravity. "This is it," Harper breathed, his voice reverent, "the heart of the sleeper's legacy." The team cautiously entered the structure, moving through long, echoing corridors lined with murals depicting scenes of cosmic events, interstellar voyages, and civilizations rising and falling. They saw images that looked strikingly similar to Earth and its solar system, leading to an unsettling realization. The sleepers had known of Earth. In the central chamber, a massive crystalline structure rose from the floor, its surface pulsating with a faint, rhythmic light. The crystal seemed to breathe, radiating warmth and energy that filled the room with a strange sense of peace. Harper approached the crystal, examining the inscriptions around it. "These symbols, they speak of protection, of stewardship. It's as if the sleepers viewed themselves as guardians, watching over worlds like ours." Suddenly, a voice filled the room, deep and resonant, but gentler than the voice they'd heard during the trials. "We are the sleepers," it intoned. "We have seen the rise and fall of many. Those who inhabit this world must understand the burden of its legacy." The voice paused, allowing the meaning to settle over the team. Then it continued, "We offer you a choice. You may stay, but with this choice comes responsibility. Nova Terra is not a world to be ruled, but a world to be guided. Prove yourselves worthy stewards, and the planet's resources will flourish for you." Malik felt a weight settle in her chest. "We accept," she said, her voice firm. "We've come here to build, not to conquer. We'll treat Nova Terra as it deserves." The crystal pulsed in response, and a final message reverberated through the chamber. "Then we grant you the guardianship. Tend to this world with wisdom, and its secrets will serve you well." The team returned to the settlement with news of the guardianship, sharing their encounter with the sleepers and their new role as stewards of Nova Terra. The settlers listened in rapt silence, the significance of their role weighing heavily on each of them. Lucian, once skeptical, now seemed deeply moved. He addressed the gathered crowd, his voice filled with a conviction they hadn't seen before. "We were given a second chance, not just for ourselves, but for this world. If we treat Nova Terra with respect, we honor those who came before us, and we build something greater than any of us could have imagined." From that day forward, the settlers lived by the principles of the guardianship. They approached their work with reverence, carefully managing resources, nurturing the land, and respecting the planet's delicate balance. The sleepers' legacy became their guide, an ancient presence that reminded them of the responsibility they now bore. Under Malik's leadership, New Horizons grew into a thriving settlement. The people of Nova Terra established schools, farms, workshops, and libraries, filling the land with the sound of laughter, learning, and life. Harper's research led to new discoveries about the planet's ecosystem, and Mira's engineering innovations allowed them to expand their reach, tapping into renewable energy sources they hadn't considered before. The Azran, ever watchful, remained nearby, offering their wisdom when needed, but allowing humanity to shape Nova Terra in their own way. Eva led cultural initiatives, preserving the stories and traditions of Earth while encouraging the creation of new customs. She organized festivals, gatherings, and ceremonies, celebrating the blend of old and new that defined their lives. A legacy for the future years passed, and the settlement flourished. Children born on Nova Terra grew up with the stories of Earth, but their hearts belonged to the alien skies and vast plains of their new home. The guardianship became a sacred responsibility, passed down through generations as a reminder of the price they'd paid and the promise they'd made. In time, they uncovered more about the Sleepers' history, learning of other worlds they'd watched over, of civilizations that had risen, fallen, and left behind legacies of their own. The settlers added their own chapter to this ancient story, understanding that they, too, were now part of a larger tapestry. Under the stars of Nova Terra, Captain Zara Malik stood on a ridge overlooking new horizons. The lights of the settlement twinkled below, and she felt a quiet pride for everything they had achieved. They were no longer just survivors. They were builders, explorers, and guardians. As she watched the stars, Malik felt a deep connection to the Sleepers, a kinship with the unseen watchers who had given them this chance. Nova Terra was no longer just a planet. It was home. Years had passed since humanity first set foot on Nova Terra. What began as a fragile settlement had grown into a thriving community, a beacon of resilience and harmony. The settlers, once strangers bound only by survival, had become the stewards of this new world, united by the guardianship bestowed upon them by the Sleepers. Children who had never seen Earth now played in the fields of Nova Terra, climbing rocks under an alien sky and learning the stories of both worlds. The community had embraced its role, striking a delicate balance between preserving the past and building a future worthy of their new home. The children of Nova Terra were the first generation born entirely on this planet. They knew of Earth through stories, songs, and legends shared by their parents. Eva Park had ensured Earth's history would never be forgotten, compiling a vast archive of stories, music, and traditions. She taught them to honor both worlds and reminded them that while they were rooted in the past, they were growing toward the future. Captain Malik's young granddaughter, Zara, named after her, was one of the most curious children of all. The elder Zara, now simply known as Captain to the children, often found her namesake beside her, asking questions about the stars, the Sleepers, and what lay beyond their world. "Do you think we'll ever meet more Sleepers?" Young Zara asked one evening, gazing up at the vast, twinkling sky. The captain smiled softly, resting a hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. "The universe is full of mysteries, Zara. The Sleepers are only one part of it. But remember, the real power lies in what we choose to build right here." The child nodded thoughtfully, her young mind already filled with dreams that reached beyond the stars. Captain Zara Malik, though older and slower now, still held the respect of the entire settlement. Under her guidance, New Horizons had grown beyond anyone's expectations, but she knew the time had come to pass on her responsibilities. In a quiet ceremony attended by the settlement's most respected leaders and elders, Malik formally entrusted the guardianship to a council of younger settlers, including Lucian Hayes, Mira Shen, Eva Park, and even her granddaughter as a young apprentice. "This is no longer just a role," Malik told them, her voice steady. "It's a legacy. The choices you make will determine what Nova Terra becomes for the generations yet to come." The council accepted the guardianship with solemn respect, and Lucian, who had once questioned Malik's leadership, now stood beside her as an equal, humbled by the years of growth he had undergone. Together, they pledged to honor the world they'd built and the lessons of the Sleepers. Dr. Harper's studies into the mysteries of Nova Terra had continued over the years, leading him to uncover new layers of the Sleepers' knowledge. His work revealed that Nova Terra was part of an ancient network of worlds connected by the Sleepers' energy fields, each planet protected by similar trials and guardianships. He gathered the council to share his findings, excitement lighting his face. There may be other settlements like ours out there, on other worlds guided by the sleepers. We could be part of something much larger than we ever imagined. Eva's eyes sparkled with wonder. Perhaps one day we could find them. Imagine connecting with others who have shared our journey. The council was filled with a renewed sense of purpose, a feeling that Nova Terra was not the end of their story, but the beginning. They began constructing new observatories and communication arrays, hoping one day to reach out to others among the stars. To celebrate their accomplishments, the settlers established an annual festival they called the Festival of New Beginnings. They honored both Earth and Nova Terra, recounting the trials of the journey and the guardianship bestowed upon them. The entire settlement gathered, decorated in colors symbolizing Earth's blue and green, as well as Nova Terra's pale lavender and rose. Children performed plays about the trials of the sleepers, while elders shared stories of Earth's oceans, forests, and the vibrant cultures they had left behind. At the heart of the festival was a ceremony honoring the guardianship, with the council reaffirming their promise to protect and nurture Nova Terra. Eva led the ceremony, her voice filled with reverence as she addressed the gathered settlers. "We came here as strangers, survivors of a lost world," she said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "Now we stand here as guardians, builders of a new future. Nova Terra has become more than a refuge. It is our home, our legacy. May we honor it in all we do." The crowd cheered, a sound of unity and joy that echoed into the night. Children danced, elders shared tales, and families gathered under the alien stars, feeling more at home than they ever had before. One night, as the festival wound down, a faint glow appeared over the mountains, the same light they'd once seen when they first encountered the sleepers. This time, the settlers understood it not as a warning, but as a quiet acknowledgement. The council and a group of settlers climbed to a nearby ridge, watching as the glow pulsed gently in the distance. Dr. Harper, standing beside Malik, believed it was a final message from the sleepers, a quiet blessing, a promise that they would always be watching over Nova Terra. "Do you think they're still guiding us?" Eva asked, her voice filled with wonder. Harper nodded slowly. "I think they're watching to see what we make of this world, of ourselves. The sleepers gave us the tools, but they trust us to shape the future." Malik placed a hand on her granddaughter's shoulder, the child staring wide-eyed at the lights. "Remember this, Zara," she said softly. "The universe is filled with mysteries, but the most important one is right here, how we choose to live and what we choose to leave behind." The glow slowly faded, leaving them with the stars, and a renewed sense of purpose filled the settlers' hearts. The sleepers' legacy was now theirs to continue, to protect, and to pass on. As the years passed, the settlers of Nova Terra continued to build a world founded on resilience, unity, and respect for the planet that had given them a second chance. The guardianship became a revered role, passed down through generations, and the settlers honored both Earth and Nova Terra in their daily lives. Under Captain Malik's guidance, they had transcended mere survival. They had created a society rooted in peace and purpose, bound by their promise to the sleepers and to each other. In her later years, Malik would sit on the ridge, watching the settlement and the distant stars. She knew her time was nearing its end, but she took comfort in the knowledge that Nova Terra was in good hands. Her granddaughter, now grown, had joined the council, embodying the same courage and vision that had brought them through the trials. One morning, as the sun rose over Nova Terra, Malik passed peacefully, leaving behind a world united by the values she had championed. Her legacy lived on in the hearts of her people, in the laughter of children, in the thriving fields and quiet mountains of their home. The people of Nova Terra looked to the future, carrying with them the memory of Earth, the wisdom of the sleepers, and a dream that stretched beyond the stars. The universe was vast, but Nova Terra was theirs, and as long as they remembered where they had come from, they knew they would never be alone.